Okay, I think I'm ready. We're all ready to talk about hydrangeas. So let's get this going. I am Diane Blazek. I'm the Executive Director of National Garden Bureau. Today's webinar is called Ask the Experts About Hydrangeas. We have so many things to talk about. I have in my office, Gail Pabst is here, and she's going to be posting some links for you. So if you see Gail posting links, she is the one that is supposed to be doing that, but anybody can add some links in if you would like to about hydrangeas. What I'm going to do is introduce our panel first. Then we're going to go into a presentation, and then we're going to get into some myth busting along with some general hydrangea tips. So first, let me introduce our panel. We have Georgia from Monrovia. We have Natalie from Proven Winter Shrubs, Spring Meadow, and we have Ryan from Bailey Nursery, Endless Summer. So let's pop back to Georgia, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself to give a quick introduction about yourself and your company.
Sure. Well, thank you, Diane. My name is Georgia Clay. I am the Plant Selections Manager from Monrovia Nursery. We are a wholesale nursery, so we supply independent garden centers and Lowe's throughout the United States with all sorts of different plants. I think we do like 4,000 different varieties of plants and an awful lot of hydrangeas. So I'm glad to be here.
Only 4,000. My goodness. Come on. You need to up it a little bit, Georgia. Okay, Natalie.
Hi, my name is Natalie Carmoli. I am the Public Relations Specialist for Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs. I work at an independent nursery called Spring Meadow Nursery. We're right along the shores of Lake Michigan. If you look at Michigan like it's a hand, and I don't know which way it's appearing to you, we're right along the shore here. Wisconsin's over there. We grow, like I said, all the Proven Winners Color Choice shrubs. We only grow shrubs here, and I'm just really happy to be here today.
Thank you. And Ryan.
Hey everyone, my name is Ryan McEnany, and I also work for a wholesale nursery called Bailey Nurseries. We're based in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. We, as a company, are only wholesale, but you probably know us through our consumer brands that are sold all across North America and around the world. Endless Summer Hydrangeas, which is celebrating 20 years this year, which is crazy to think about, as well as First Editions Shrubs and Trees, which we'll talk about today. And we also have a collection of roses called Easy Elegance. So really happy to be here. Hydrangeas is one of my favorite things to talk about. We could be here all day long and still have more to say, I think, especially with our group. So we're really excited to get this kicked off. Thanks for having us, Diane.
Great, thank you. Yes. So hydrangeas are definitely one of our most popular topics here at National Garden Bureau. In fact, I'm going to have Gail put a few links in because with the number of webinars and blogs that we've done, I think there will be a ton of good information. By the way, we're going to save this chat. We will send it out to everybody after. So don't worry, you're going to miss these links. But several years ago, we did our first webinar on hydrangeas. So we've got a YouTube video of that. And then last year we did a webinar that was really focusing on some of the new hydrangea varieties. So we have that webinar, and then, oh my goodness, on our blogs, and these get so many shares. There was one blog specifically on knowing when or which hydrangeas bloom on old wood versus new wood. That's a blog. There was another one on how to get your hydrangeas to bloom. Actually, we did two on that one, getting your hydrangeas to bloom, which of course has a lot to do with the type you have and how you're pruning it. There was another one specifically on pruning. And then several years ago, our flowering shrub for the year was the hydrangea. So as you can tell, we love hydrangeas here. And at one point we did do a blog on some myth busting. We're going to take that one today and expand on it even further. So what I want to do now is let's go to, gotta find it here. There we go, share screen. Okay, we are going to do a little presentation on some of the varieties. We have allowed each one of our panelists to talk about 6 different varieties. So I'm assuming it's their 6 favorite varieties. And before we get into that, I just wanted to show our website. This is the homepage of our website. And if you go to new plants, And if you want to search just by hydrangeas, you can find a lot of these hydrangeas listed there. And this is what the page looks like. So if you come down here under plant category and go to flowering shrubs under common name, click hydrangeas, you can pull them up yourselves. But if you're on this webinar, you get to hear from them live and in person. So Ryan, I'm going to shoot this over to you and you can start talking about your 6 varieties.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And we are going to start this off with a bang. This is a brand new hydrangea for spring 2024. So you might be looking at this and say, I've never seen that before. And that's because you haven't. It's just starting to hit garden centers right now. If you're in a colder climate like us, we're maybe just starting to see some buds on the trees start to swell right now. So you'll see it maybe in another 3-4 weeks. This is called Eclipse Bigleaf Hydrangea. This is in our first editions collection. So when you go to the garden center, you see that bright purple pot. That's where you'll find this. And Eclipse is the first hydrangea that has this really dark, almost black foliage. So it's really, really cool to have in a hydrangea, which we haven't seen before, that will keep that dark foliage all season long, year after year. And Eclipse was bred internally at Bailey Nurseries at our breeding farm in Georgia. So we started it there to make sure it can withstand the heat. We do lots of testing up here in Minnesota to see that it can handle the zone 4 or 5 cold winters at our facilities in Oregon, and then with our partners all around the US, Canada, and internationally to make sure that when we've got something really different and interesting like this with that really beautiful dark foliage, that's going to continue. It's not just a one-time fluke in a breeding farm, but that it happens over and over. So we think this one's going to be a little bit different how you use it in the landscape. So it's going to bring a lot of that drama to it, but it's also a really great backdrop. It's about 3 to 5 feet tall and wide. So it's going to be a nice kind of like hedge, great focal point, but another really beautiful plant to have some perennials and ornamental grasses and annuals planted around. So we're really excited about this. It's got this cranberry flower. So you can see it's starting to emerge. It keeps sort of that white center at the beginning, then will become fully saturated. If you've got acidic soils, then you'll see an amethyst color. It's not really purple. It's almost more jewel toned. So it's really, really, really beautiful against that dark foliage. We did label this zone 5, not zone 4. We were in zone 4 here in Minnesota. Now with the USDA changes, we're zone 5, but it does flower. I've had it in my yard for 3 years and it's flowered every year, all on new growth. But it's just not as floriferous in zone 4 as some of the newer endless summers, for example. So we wanted just to set expectations and label it zone 5. So really, really excited about Eclipse. All right, we're going to switch species here and go from bigleaf hydrangea to panicle hydrangea. This is a relatively new one. This was introduced 2 years ago called Little Hottie. And this is a panicle hydrangea that if you want it to be a little bit more compact, 3 to 5 feet is what we label it, just to give a little bit of flexibility. The ones that we've had in the ground here in Minnesota are really, truly 3 feet tall, no bigger than that. They've been in the ground for 6-7 years. Same thing in our facility in Georgia, 3, maybe 4 feet tall, and been in the ground again about that 6-year mark. So we don't see that it's going to get turn into a big plant after we label it little. It's got incredible amount of those really crisp white flowers, and it absolutely covers it. So you see it here in a deco pot, but when you see it in the landscape, it's just covered top to bottom. It's really, really exciting, especially in warmer climates where sometimes panicle hydrangeas can burn out a little bit later in the season. This one, again, specifically bred in Georgia to survive that warm climate heat, is really beautiful. It's got a nice fall color. It's not quite as intense as the next one that we'll show you, but nice, compact, really floriferous, heat tolerant panicle hydrangea that also does well, of course, all the way up here in zones 3, 4, 5. So now we're going to go to a little bit bigger panicle hydrangea. This one is called Berry White. If you have vanilla strawberry, strawberry sundae in your yard, you know those. This is the same breeder as those varieties. About the same size as vanilla strawberry, so it's going to be a bigger hedging shrub or back of border against a fence. I planted a hedge of these along a fence in my backyard just because it's going to get that really nice height on it. Really super strong stems. Of course, with panicle hydrangeas, you want to make sure that you're cutting them back about a third, maybe a half in a younger plant every winter to help solidify those stems. But this one really kind of does it on its own. And that fall color on it is just spectacular. So if you're looking for kind of like that introductory hydrangea, panicle is a great option because they're just really easy. They're easy to get established. Once they're established, they're a little more drought tolerant, and you get that really incredible dark, almost Merlot color on berry white. And that small picture is just from my cell phone. So this is not like a really fancy photoshopped image. It's just me in the garden. So really, I love this one if you've got space for it. The next one is also a panicle hydrangea, but you know, the panicles that we saw in Little Hottie and Berry White are really dense. This one's a little bit looser, and so I like using this in a little bit more of a naturalized setting. This is called White Diamonds, and it really truly is one of my favorites. Again, just because it has a little bit different flower shape than some of the other panicles that we all know and love. This one is, since it's got those sort of like tiers in it, we have it in a really densely planted area. This is where it was, or what it looked like a few years ago. Now, if you look at our garden, we've planted a bunch like Great Burnett that sort of comes up through it. That's really, really beautiful. Nice fall color on this one as well. But really one of my favorites just to add a little bit of texture into the landscape. And so the next one is actually planted right in front of what you could see on that White Diamonds. This one is called Jetstream, and this is an oak leaf hydrangea. So now on to our third species. Again, we could talk all day long about care tips, and I'm sure we will as we get towards the end of it today. Some tips and tricks, but each of them has a little bit different care tip. Jetstream is, we have it labeled Zone 5. The picture you can see in the bottom with that beautiful fall color is here in Minnesota. We have it planted even in Zone 4, even though it doesn't really flower because it only flowers on old wood, because that fall color on it is just spectacular. And there's a lot of really fabulous oak leaf hydrangeas on the market. We introduced Jetstream because it's got a really dense habit. So as some of them get really big and those flower heads you can see get really large on there, sometimes some of the older varieties can start to droop a little bit. And so this has a denser habit, more erect stems, and it doesn't get quite as big as some of the really old, more traditional varieties. I was at Madison Square Park in New York City. If you ever get to New York, go to Madison Square Park, and they have a really fabulous hydrangea collection. And some of the oak leaf that they have on the corner are like 20 feet tall. And it's gorgeous, but it's not something that most of us can have in our home landscape. So this really takes all those great things about this native selection from North America. This quercifolia hydrangea is native to the Southeast, brings all those really great things, but just in a little bit more compact size. And the last one, we're going to go back to big leaf hydrangea. This is called Pop Star. This is another beautiful reblooming hydrangea. I didn't mention it for Eclipse, but Eclipse is also a reblooming hydrangea. When I said that it bloomed in my yard all on new growth, that's because it has that ability to flower on old and new, just like everything that we have in the Endless Summer collection. And Pop Star, if you were on the webinar last year, was new for 2023. So you'll continue to see this in really big numbers in garden centers this year. It's a little more unique than some of the other Endless Summers that we've got because it's that beautiful lace cap. So again, when you're talking about adding texture, great pollinator access in the landscape, Pop Star is a really fabulous option. Really compact. That 18 to 36 inches is real. And again, we've got a little bit of that variation because of where you live, but I've had it in my yard probably for 5 years now, and it gets about knee height, and that includes some of those old wood stems surviving the winter. It doesn't die back. More bud hardy, more floriferous than some of our older varieties. This is the one that we say sort of set our new standard for rebloom power because it flowers so crazy that even our growers are like, it's a little bit hard in propagation because it tries to flower so much. So that rebloom on it, especially in colder regions, if you do have some dieback after a winter, to have that speed to rebloom is really, really important, because then we're not waiting for that rebloom to kick in August or September. We can still get some of those flowers in July, even if it dies back. So really excited about this one as well. Really beautiful electric blue or really bright and vibrant pink flowers, depending on your soil.
Great. Thank you so much, Ryan. There is one quick question for you. Can you cut or trim down the Eclipse? I believe you said that it grew on new wood.
Yes. So really any of the rebloomers, I'm sure we'll talk about pruning a lot throughout this, but our general suggestion is try not to do any heavy pruning on these, even though they do have the ability to flower on old and new for any of these reblooming. The less pruning you do, the better. And you know, when we talk about size of plants, because that's a lot of times what we get questions around pruning is, can we prune it to keep it small, or it's growing over the window that I planted it in front of? Really try and buy the plant that fits the size of your space. And if you do have to prune it, you just have to know that you might not get as many flowers that year. If you've got something like Pop Star that just flowers like crazy, you're going to probably see more because it can rebloom more quickly. A more traditional rebloomer, maybe not as much. But I know that Georgia and Natalie have some really amazing rebloomers too, so I'm sure they'll talk about their speed to rebloom. But generally, try to avoid doing heavy prunes on these and just do a little haircut in spring with what doesn't survive the winter, and then deadhead later in the year.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Natalie, I believe you're up now.
Hi, everybody. Once again, I'm Natalie from Proven Winners Color Choice. I think what I want to address first before we get into the hydrangeas is, yes, we're all breeding hydrangeas that perform better, and Ryan spoke to that a little bit. And a lot of times, I think what consumers come to me and what they say is, well, why do your plants cost more? And I think that's going to be the case across the board when you're looking at some of these really beautiful, highly cultivated branded plants, they're going to cost a little more. And the reason behind that is we really invest a lot in breeding. We really are investing a lot in your success. We want to make sure that whenever you get a plant, it doesn't just perform, it performs exceptionally well in your garden. It performs exceptionally well in cold weather, in heat. It's going to rebloom better. The color is going to be better. And it takes an investment on our end to do that as well. So, while we can absorb some of that, of course, through quantity, we sell a lot of plants. It also is an investment on the behalf of the gardener. But what you get in return is a plant that you know is going to do well in your garden. It's not going to be a throwaway plant. It's not going to be like that one that's like, oh, you know, you keep seeing people now, it's getting close to Mother's Day, and they're going to say, oh, I got a hydrangea for $10 at Costco. Can I put it in my yard? You can, yes. Is it going to perform really well? Big question mark. So the nice thing about these is everybody across the board, Monrovia, Bailey, Spring Meadow, we all invest a lot in your success. And that's what you're going to see in all of the plants that you're going to view today. And the first one I'm going to talk about is phyla called Let's Dance Lovable. This one's actually bred by an in-house breeder that we have here. Her name is Megan Matai, and she does beautiful things with hydrangeas. And you can see this is part of our Let's Dance series. So when you see Let's Dance on any tag of a Proven Winners plant, Let's Dance means it's a reblooming hydrangea. So we also work on making sure that not only does it have more bud hardiness so that old wood blooms, but that the new wood blooms faster. So you're not waiting until deep into the season to see that extra bloom on new wood. What sets Let's Dance Lovable apart is that beautiful color to its bloom. This is a really deeply pigmented bloom. We've taken some of our breeding from our old City Line series that had very saturated color to all of its florets, and we've put it into this Let's Dance Lovable. You can see it gets a very deep, vivid blue. And if you have, acid soil, then it's going to get alkaline soil, then it's going to get red. It's got dark, dark, glossy foliage that starts out green. In the fall, it turns a beautiful burgundy color, which is a little unusual for a macrophylla. And it's a nice compact size, not super small, but a 3 to 4 foot size. And it's hardy down to zone 5. So that's one of our newer rebloomers in our Let's Dance Lovable. We have one of these in our trial and display gardens. It is covered with blooms from top to bottom, an absolutely beautiful performer.
So Natalie, I'm going to jump in. The width on Let's Dance, is it 3 to 4 feet high and wide?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. And then do you compare the performance of Let's Dance, I guess, with each other?
With each other in the series?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, honestly, a lot of times when we breed a new plant and we put it in the Let's Dance series, we're throwing something else out of the series. The benchmark is high performance. So we're not going to say something like, well, Let's Dance Lovable blooms a lot better than Let's Dance Big Band. Our benchmark is that they're both really, really strong, heavy rebloomers. We do have some older varieties that might not be quite as strong a rebloomers, but we keep them in because people look for them. They love them. Our growers still want to grow them. They're reliable, but these guys are really, really super bloomers.
Great, thank you.
All right, our next hydrangea, moving on, is an hydrangea arborescens or smooth hydrangea. This might look a little different than the Annabelle smooth hydrangea or the Incredible smooth hydrangea that you're used to seeing, because this is a lace cap smooth hydrangea. It's a variation of a radiata, and this is the first pink lace cap smooth hydrangea that's ever been bred. This is bred by Tom Ranney. He's a breeder in North Carolina, or I'm sorry, this one's bred by Tim Wood right here in our Spring Meadow Nursery. We do a lot of our pink hydrangea breeding with Tom, and I have one of his later. But this is a smooth hydrangea. You can see how much the pollinators love those fertile florets in the center. So that center fuzzy pink part are all the fertile florets, really easy for the pollinators to get to. And then a few sterile florets sprinkled along the outside, dark ruby stems. This is a very graceful plant, one that you're going to see kind of swaying in the wind in kind of a gorgeous garden cottage look, 4 to 5 feet, nice and hardy like a smooth hydrangea will be too, zone 3 to 8. Smooth hydrangeas bloom exclusively on new wood. So these are the ones that you do want to prune. You want to cut them down to about the 1/3 in, I mean, you can cut them down in late fall, but I usually do it in early spring. I like to leave the seed heads for the different critters and stuff that want to get in there and feed on them. And they give really beautiful winter interest. But you cut them down by 1/3 and all of their blooms are going to grow on that new wood. So they're also very, very easy to grow. This is a species that's native to North America. This is what we call a native cultivar. It has been bred with other plants. So it's not strictly native. We didn't yank it out of a mountainside somewhere, but it is a native cultivar. That makes it really naturally adapted to grow well in your garden here in North America. And this is one of my favorite new releases that we have in the Proven Winners collection, and this is called Let's Dance Can Do. This one's a little bit different. It looks kind of like a mountain hydrangea, looks kind of like a big leaf hydrangea, and the reason is because it's both. So this is a cultivar cross of Macrophylla and Serrata, and this is also bred by Megan Matai here at Spring Meadow Nursery. And what this does, and that's really, really special is it not only has this kind of a fuller lace cap bloom. So if you see a traditional mountain hydrangea, once again, we talked about those fertile florets in the center. On a mountain hydrangea, they kind of have a broccoli appearance. You can kind of see it in the florets in that picture. And then it has the sterile florets around the outside. In this one, it's going to have more sterile florets as the plant matures. So it's almost going to cover that center, leaving just a center of the fertile florets showing. But what this does that's really special is this sets its buds all the way up the stem on the old wood and the new wood. We have a row of these outside here in Grand Haven, Michigan. And last year, when they put them in for the first time, the grounds crew came through and cut them all, like pruned them all, the tops of all of them in March. And we went crazy wondering why they were doing that. Because yes, traditionally you want to preserve, you only want to give them, like Ryan said, a haircut, right? You want to preserve those buds that are at the terminal ends of the stems. But this one doesn't need that. It has buds all the way up the stem. And the ones in front of our building looked identical to what you're looking at today. It blooms inside and out, top to bottom, on old wood first and then new wood. So this is the biggest blooming machine I've ever seen. It has a light pink color to a purple color, absolutely gorgeous. One of many of these new crosses of Macrophylla and Serrata that we're adding to our catalog, just because we love how much they perform. We love how bud hardy they are, all the way down to zone 4. Okay, we're going to move on to a panicle hydrangea. This is a fun guy that we call pufferfish. We like to think of this guy as a larger, more puffed up bobo. I know a lot of people are really familiar with bobo panicle hydrangea. It's a dwarf to compact size hydrangea. This one's really only about a foot bigger, 3 to 5 feet, but you can see how big and fluffy the blooms are on this. Now the panicles on these, typically when you look at a lot of panicle hydrangeas, they're a really long cone-shaped flower. This one has more of a rounded flower. It will start out a green color, turn white like you see in the picture, and then it'll, just before it turns back to green again, this one does not turn pink, it spouts the little sprout of buds that you see there at the tip of the bloom. There we go, pointing at it right there. So that will spit out, like a pufferfish, a little bit of bloom at the end that gives it kind of a little more appeal and fun. Another super bloomer. When you see a picture of this in the garden on its own, it blooms from top to bottom, obscuring the foliage. We love foliage on hydrangeas, but this one is all about the flowers. Absolutely gorgeous. USDA zone 3 to 8. Foolproof. These hydrangeas are really easy to grow, just like a smooth hydrangea. It blooms exclusively on new wood. You can cut it back by a third at the beginning of the season, and you're going to get really amazing results in your garden. Okay, our next new hydrangea, and we introduce, 3 to 4 hydrangeas. We introduce about 30 new plants every year. 3 to 4 of them are usually hydrangeas, and for this year, this is a new one for the garden centers called Pinky Winky Prime. This is another panicle hydrangea, but unlike the smaller ones that a lot of us are breeding these days, we really have been working hard at breeding for compact sizes, breeding for hydrangeas that people can put in containers or in the front of the border. We went bigger. So we already loved Pinky Winky for its great big statement that it makes in the garden. And this one is even larger. It'll get over 6 feet. And like Pinky Winky, which has those really, really long, gorgeous blooms, this one does as well. So this is a bloom that's going to be well over 12 inches long. It has lacy flowers, a little less lacy than Pinky Winky, the original. So it's going to be a little bit more full, and you can see how it turns pink from the bottom, a traditional way that panicle hydrangeas will turn color. They develop their color naturally. You can't change the color with the soil. So many of them will start out white and then they'll blush pink from the bottom up like Pinky Winky Prime does. But you can just see how big and gorgeous the flowers are. I mean, you can see the leaves in the middle of that one growing through on the stem. So that's a nice big version. If you have a spot where you really want to make a statement in your garden, Pinky Winky Prime is a great way to go. All right, and this is a mountain hydrangea, Tough Stuff Top Fun, also new to garden centers this year. Remember what I talked about, those broccoli-like florets in the middle? Those are the sterile florets that you can see in the center of this mountain hydrangea or Hydrangea serrata. The reason we call them mountain hydrangeas is both mountain hydrangeas and bigleaf hydrangeas originate from Japan. Bigleaf hydrangeas from the coastal areas of Japan and mountain hydrangeas from the mountainous areas of Japan. That makes them a little bit more bud hardy. They behave a little bit different in cold. They bloom at a little different pace, and it makes them a little hardier, USDA zone 4, as opposed to a lot of big leaf hydrangeas that start out at a 5. Tough Stuff Top Fun has a dark green foliage. You can see on the notes it has burgundy stems, and the florets that are on the outside there are going to turn pink to purple depending on soil. This is also of all of our Tough Stuff series. Whenever you see Tough Stuff, they're going to be mountain hydrangeas. This one is our heaviest bloomer yet of reblooming mountain hydrangeas. Now, if you've been growing hydrangeas for a while, you know that mountain hydrangeas haven't always been reblooming. Way back when I was a kid and my mom was gardening, you couldn't find a mountain hydrangea that didn't exclusively bloom on old wood. So the Tough Stuff series is one we developed. So like a lot of what's really, really popular in big leaf hydrangeas, it does bloom on old and new wood. Our strongest bloomer yet, Tough Stuff Top Fun.
All right, Georgia, looks like it's your turn for more exciting new varieties.
Okay, so yeah, for Monrovia, our main hydrangea collection is the Seaside Serenade collection. We have a lot of different varieties within that hydrangea collection, and our newest one is this Kitty Hawk. And I personally love this new color. I think we've put out a lot of wonderful, like bright purples and blues and bright reds and deep hot pinks. And I've always been sort of craving this saturated, almost baby pink. And I love that we were able to offer this color in this great series, which is compact, so 3 to 4 feet tall and wide. Same story as, of course, what Ryan and Natalie are talking about, finding hydrangeas that are going to fit a space and not outgrow their gardens. One thing that I really love about Seaside Serenade as a whole is that all of them have these incredibly sturdy stems. I mean, they're like as thick as your thumb. They're just super, super strong. So you get these big, massive flowers and they don't flop over in the garden. So you can really enjoy these plants. The flowers are held up all season long and they are super tough. Each individual flower can last for 3 months on the plant, which is pretty incredible. So these are all rebloomers, of course, but if you don't want a deadhead right away, they look gorgeous for 3 to 4 months, which is pretty incredible. And then next, I mentioned we have these like fabulous deep bright pink or bright purples, and Newport I think is the best deep purple on the market. It's just stunning. Every single time I drive in our nurseries and I come across a field of this crop, it's like stunning. You just have to stop and look at it. The color is fantastic. And again, that habit, 3 to 4 feet tall and wide, just fabulous. And all of our hydrangeas, we trial extensively. We trial at all 4 of our nurseries, which is in each corner of the United States, in South Georgia, which is just an hour north of Tallahassee, Florida. So high disease pressure there. We really, really are focusing on powdery mildew, on foliar health. We trial in Visalia, California, which is really hot and really dry, and then up in the Willamette Valley, and then also in Connecticut, the Willamette Valley, Oregon, I should say. I lived there, so I think that that's like everyone knows, right? So this is also a rebloomer, Newport, very, very fabulous stem strength, again, tough and leathery foliage. The foliage itself, oftentimes, in high wind events or in storms, a lot of the country gets a lot of their storms in the summer. And we often see a lot of leaf tattering on hydrangeas. And because these have such a thick, leathery leaf, they really resist that tattering, which is really a fabulous feature as well. And then next is Martha's Vineyard. This is our super rich red hot pink flower here. This is another big leaf Hydrangea macrophylla. Fabulous color on Martha's Vineyard. It's as new, but it is one of our very most popular plants. And it's not influenced by soil pH. So if you have an acidic soil and you're looking for a bright red, pink, and everything is turning purple on you, something like Martha's Vineyard would be a really fabulous plant for your garden because it's not influenced by that. Another, again, compact, 3-foot tall by 3-foot wide, reblooming variety. The breeder behind our Seaside Serenade hydrangeas actually breeds both garden varieties and cut flowers. And so all of that I've shown you are sort of cut flower rejects in that they are too compact because the florists, they want a long stem, and they want a flower that's going to last for 3 months and last really long in the vase, but they need that long stem. So these, while the flowers were there and the stem and the vase life was there, the stems were too short, which is fabulous for the garden. So it's sort of the best of both worlds, a great cutting variety and a fabulous garden variety. And then Bar Harbor, which is an arborescens variety. I think Natalie and Ryan did a really great job of explaining, those are native to the Eastern United States. They're super hardy. They can endure those really harsh zone 3 winters. And Bar Harbor is our more compact variety. So this is only going to be about 4 to 5 feet tall. And again, with those sturdy stems. So this is an excellent choice for the East Coast, excellent choice for colder zones. Again, in the summertime, you often get those big storm events and plants split or they flop over. And what we've noticed with Bar Harbor is that it's less likely to do that. So after a big storm or after strong winds, it's most likely to be still standing upright, which is really fabulous.
And Georgia, you said this is an arborescens, not macrophylla. So that was my mistake. I put the wrong one on there. Sorry about that.
That's okay. We're about to get to a paniculata. Yeah, right here. So strawberry shake has been around for a few years now, but it's really a great plant, and it's one of our newest paniculatas that we offer. It is, again, that same the theme that you are hearing from us all, more compact, so 4 to 5 feet tall, just means it's going to fit in your garden space a little bit better than some that's going to get 8 feet. Again, sturdy stems, so those flowers can hold upright, much more. The flowers are super full and they start off lime green, they open to a white, and then the fall color is this really delectable, beautiful pink that I just really love in the garden. And then lastly, another macrophylla. So we're switching back to the beginning. This is Glacier Bay, and this is a very, very different hydrangea macrophylla. I have not seen anything like this. We trial thousands of varieties and we're constantly looking for something different and unique. And I think this really is quite unique. It has jet black stems that hold open this fabulous crisp white flower bract. So the bract itself it's sort of hard to see, but it's almost this like star shaped cup. And so it's just such an interesting looking hydrangea. It's got this ultra modern look to it. So, Hydrangea macrophylla is often like a cottage plant or something, you think of an old fashioned plant. And I think Glacier Bay just really churns it around and makes it this really ultra modern, really super cool plant.
And I guess that's it. But that was wonderful. Thank you, everybody. And now what we're going to do is kind of talk about some of the questions that we've been getting in. And this first part might be kind of fun. We're going to talk about some Mythbusters. And so we have a few things here that I will talk about. I'll bring up. And you guys can tell me, hey, is this reality or is this some myth that just don't pay attention to what you see on social media kind of thing? Household items that will change hydrangea colors. What's the myth? What are some of the things that are being tossed around to use? And what is reality? So take it away.
I love talking about this because I was on an extension site, anybody that works in gardenings and especially around a lot of hydrangeas and especially in marketing, we're going to be on other people's extension sites because that's where a lot of really useful information is given to people about hydrangeas. But on this site, they were really trying to combat all of these people that were coming on there and saying that they could change their hydrangea by adding all of these wild things to the base of the plant, things that I honestly could kill your plant. You can't put, they were saying, oh, I dump a gallon of orange juice on my plant every spring because they think, well, orange juice is acidic, right? So it's going to turn your plant. No, don't put orange juice on there. Don't put rusty nails in there. And if you do, please wear leather gardening gloves so you don't get tetanus when you scratch yourself with it. A penny ball won't work. A penny ball would be pretty under there, but pennies won't change the soil. You can put coffee grounds or eggshells down there if you want. It might add a little something to your soil, but it's not going to change the color of your hydrangea. It just isn't enough acid to change the color of your hydrangea. You need to get the proper items from your garden center. So what you want is acidic soil, but what you ought to do first is get a soil test and find out just what is the pH of your soil. We want the pH to be 5.5 or less to get a blue hydrangea. And once you have that acidic soil, then you add aluminum. If you don't have the acidic soil, the aluminum can't uptake into the plant and turn your plant blue. So there's a couple steps in making sure that your plant's going to turn blue. Yeah, but those are some of the crazy things. I mean, one thing that was wild was somebody said, my neighbor's little boys would come over and pee on my plant once a week, and that would turn it blue. And I'm like, no, that is not what is doing it. That is not what is doing it, and they need to be introduced to a bathroom. So those were some of the wilder items that I've heard.
Georgia or Ryan, do you have any other wild stories about what people are saying will change their hydrangea color?
No, but I could listen to Natalie's stories all day.
I know. Yeah, we don't have any neighbor kid stories, but yeah, we see that a lot with the nails and the pennies. And maybe if you're like right on that neutral line and they got a ton of eggshells that go in, maybe you'll see a little bit of, but it's not really enough. And that's what soil amendments are for. And there's some really great ones that can be natural and organic, if that's important to you. So I think that it's easier to just go with what is tried and true than try some of these things that you might see on Facebook. Even if you're at a pretty neutral soil level, you're going to get there a lot faster. It's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to put it down and in a month you're going to see all of a sudden you went from blue to pink. It will take time, especially if you're further away from that neutral pH. But Natalie, I'm glad you brought up the aluminum piece too, because even if you have a lower pH and you have acidic soil, if there's not that presence of aluminum, you're not going to get the blue or purple flowers. And so it's that combination of both that gets you that sort of classic Nantucket look. And this was a question in the Q&A, and so you can go back and look there too, but there's a difference between fertilizer and soil amendments. They're not the same thing. And so fertilizer is what's going to help you have a healthy, lush plant with lots of blooms, and the soil amendments, the acidifier or adding alkalinity, the garden lime, that's what's going to affect your bloom color only on big leaf hydrangeas. It's not going to work for the other species.
And it's not going to necessarily turn every big leaf hydrangea blue. My guess is that hydrangea that you're sitting in front of probably isn't going to turn Nantucket blue. Am I wrong?
Nope, it's like an amethyst purple.
It's beautiful, the red color it is, and that's designed to be the color it is. So check your tag when you buy your hydrangea. If you want a blue hydrangea, that you're getting one that can turn blue.
Good point. Always check those tags for size, for zones, for color, all of the above. And if you can't find it on the tag, you can go to any of their wonderful websites. Go to our website. We'll have additional information. So you guys were talking about amendments. So here's another myth: is you should always amend the soil before you plant your new hydrangeas. And Natalie, I think you would toss this one out. So do you want to address it?
I will. a lot of times what people think is they're really doing their plants a favor by buying a whole bunch of compost or peat moss or whatever they can find, like manure, whatever's going to make their soil nicer. And they dig their hole and they have a nice big hole, 2 times the size of your container before you put it in. And then they throw all that stuff in the hole and then they plug their container of their hydrangea right in the center of it, or whatever shrub you're planting. But the problem is if those amendments are not mixed into the soil, into the existing soil, you're going to create something called the bathtub effect. And what happens then is you've dug a hole that's kind of this shape, you've put things in the bottom of it, and you put your plant in and you water it, and all that water stops right here. And it sits around all those soil amendments because they're a different weight than the soil around them. And then your roots sit in water. Hydrangeas hate having wet feet and they will rot. There's a lot of different shrubs. Buddleia hate having wet feet. So if you must amend your soil, please, please, please mix it in really well. But honestly, all you really need to do is use the existing planting material that came in your new container. When you get a new plant, it's really, really been well taken care of. It's had a lot of fertilizer. Take what's in it, loosen the root ball, mix it in with the soil you have, and just refill the hole. Then put some mulch on top to keep the roots, the root area cool and moist, and that's really all you need to do.
Yeah, there's a comment in there about a soil test too. If you're curious about what you might have, if whether it's just understanding your pH, if there's a nutrient deficiency, there's some great kits that you can do, or work with your extension office to just better understand what you're working with as a starting point. And if you need to amend, you can go from there. But do it if you have to, not just for the fun of it. No one needs to put in extra work if you don't really need it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so we've dabbled with pruning a couple times, talked a little bit about it. I know it's different on different species. And someone is asking, and I know what the answer is going to be, but they're asking, what's the reason my neighbors and I are unable to grow any blue or pink hydrangeas after the first year, zone 6? So the way I'm interpreting that question is they're not blooming the following year. So your answer would be?
Who wants to take this one? It's probably the number one question we all get. Why isn't my hydrangea blooming? Well,
Yeah.
I can start and at least give a couple of the reasons. One might be pruning. It might be if you're talking about blue and pink, you're talking about a macrophylla most likely, or a bigleaf hydrangea. If it gets cut back in the fall or the spring, like you would with a smooth hydrangea or panicle hydrangea, the old wood buds are set the fall before. So if you cut it off, you're cutting off those buds. If it's not a reblooming hydrangea, then you're not going to get any flowers. If it is a reblooming hydrangea, depending on, especially like Natalie and I both mentioned, if you have like an older, even if it's a reblooming variety, if you have an older one, it might not have the strength or the power of some of the newer ones that we're all putting out. Because it got cut back or died back after the winter, it takes a lot of energy to regrow those stems. And then on top of that, to produce more flowers. So that could be one reason. It could be it's in the wrong site. Too much sun, too much shade. It could be not having fertilizer. You don't want to overdo it either, because over fertilizing will cause the roots to burn and you're not going to get flowers. But some fertilizer, especially as it's getting it established, that does help. It gives it, I think about it, like in spring, give it a little fertilizer. It's like a cup of coffee for all of us in the morning. Maybe again around July, it's like the Red Bull to get through the afternoon. Again, especially as it's establishing those roots and trying to build itself up, that certainly can help. One other consideration is water. This is, I know, a myth we've all talked about. Hydrangea, people hear hydra and they're like, we just need to give it all the water. And water is important, but they typically like well-drained soil. They do not like sitting in water. And so, sometimes you'll come home at the end of the day, especially on a really hot day, and you'll start to see it droop like this. That's sort of a natural defense mechanism. That's okay. Leave it alone. Have a glass of wine, go sit on the porch, Just leave it there. If it hasn't popped back up later that night or by the next morning, then maybe the soil needs a little bit of water. But a lot of times it will just do that in the heat. And if you give it too much water, it can, one, cause root rot, like Natalie was explaining. It also, think of it like flushing your body. If you have all the water, you're flushing all the toxins and stuff out. Can be the same with the plants. It can push all those really good nutrients and all the stuff that it needs to be healthy out of the soil if you're consistently overwatering it. So with these big leaf hydrangeas, kind of just take a step back and let them be. Don't overwater, don't over prune, don't over fertilize, and put it in the right spot.
Yeah, I would say, especially our rule of thumb is, if you want to prune, if you are really wanting to keep your plants in check and you really like to prune, especially for a big leaf hydrangea, the rule of thumb is, somewhere around the beginning of August. If you're in California, warm zones, don't prune after that. Prune that time and then don't touch them anymore. If you are somewhere in the Midwest, maybe that's mid-July for you. If it's mid-July, if you want to give a prune, do it then, and then don't do it later, because chances are it needs time to be able to set its buds, to grow and then set its buds. So if you're pruning much later, there's a chance that you're pruning off of your buds, or the potential for buds. And then that same for the East Coast, maybe mid-July would be the time to do that. I also think, zone 6, so this isn't really, it doesn't sound like your issue here, but if you're in a warmer area, also not getting enough cooling in the winter is far more of a concern than a hydrangea getting too hot and wilting in the sun. So not getting enough cooling, if you're, upper zone 10, and you don't get, 600 hours of cooling in the winter, that's what a hydrangea needs to set its flower bud in order to make a flower happen the next year. So that's also something to think about, where your zone is and your cooling hours, as far as getting a hydrangea, whether or not it's going to bloom or not.
Yeah, I just have a really brief thing to say, of course, because I always have something to say. I put in the chat a web address for a page on our website that is called "Why Isn't My Hydrangea Blooming?" So it's got a lot of information on it. It has a link to this document, which is a fun chart to why your hydrangea might not be blooming. You can follow it all the way down. You can download that guy. That's the same thing. There's a lot of reasons, right? A lot of times when people ask those questions, the first thing we ask is, can we see a picture of where it's planted? Because what's happening in your yard and your neighbor's yard could be unique to you. And it might be, oh my gosh, your hydrangea is sitting in a wind tunnel where it sits, or it could be your weather. It could be the frosts that you've had in the past few years, and next year it's going to bloom beautifully. So there's a lot of reasons. And you can always send pictures to any one of us. We are all experts at answering those kind of questions.
So I have a question too, and Natalie, I think you kind of touched on it earlier, but with spring, with Mother's Day, there is something called a florist hydrangea. And so maybe you can, any of you, let's talk a little bit about florist hydrangeas and garden hydrangeas, and what should you be looking at to know if you can plant it in your garden and if it'll bloom or if it won't survive, anything like that.
Right. So a lot of these florist hydrangeas are basically hydrangeas that are bred for floriculture. They're bred as gift plants. You're going to see a lot of them come out on Mother's Day. You're going to see a lot of them at your big box stores, apart from Lowe's and Home Depot, who have garden centers. You're going to see them in Costco's and Sam's Club. And they're the hydrangeas, when you look at the label and you see, well, what kind of hydrangea is that? It says hydrangea. And that's all it says. Probably what you've got is an old wood big leaf hydrangea. It's been forced to bloom at a certain time of year. It's going to have a beautiful, big, colorful bloom on it, treated to be whatever color they wanted it to be. And because it's been forced, it's not going to bloom for you again in the same year. It's all done that year. And it's going to probably be a little touchier than your other hydrangeas. Not to say I haven't gotten Shooting Star to bloom in my garden when I got it as a gift hydrangea, but there, you know, it was in a very special protected area. They take a lot of work. And why go to all that work when you have all these beautiful hydrangeas that grow really beautiful and are made for your garden? So these are made for cuttings or for a gift hydrangea.
Yeah, and I'll just add, you know, because like Natalie, you mentioned, they're forced into flowering. So all these gift hydrangeas, they typically have been forced and spent their entire life in a greenhouse. They haven't been outside. And so it's really important, if you do want to buy a gift hydrangea, you do maybe want to try to put it outside to slowly acclimate your plants to the outdoor temperatures, because a plant that's been forced and has lived its whole life in a greenhouse isn't going to like to be suddenly outside. So that's just one piece. If you do want to test that, as if that's fun for you, go ahead, but make sure you acclimate it to the outdoors.
Yeah, if you just simply can't throw it away, you know, you've enjoyed it for so long, but if you simply can't, there's good tips. Somebody had asked to define cooling hours.
Yeah, so cooling hours is the amount of cumulative hours that are spent below a certain degree. And I, off the top of my head, do not remember the degree of that. I don't know if Ryan or Natalie, you do either. But essentially, you can look it up. You can Google your cooling hours for the previous year and see your average. And it's just what happens in the winter when you're below a certain degree. And I wish I could probably Google it right now and find the answer and kick myself. But it's how cold you get. Cumulative hours, not all in a row. So you don't need 600 all together, but it's a cumulative for the season.
Great. Okay, here's another myth, and we'll let you guys address this. And I think each of you have kind of touched on it already, but, oh, you can positively keep a hydrangea small through pruning, and it will still bloom and everything.
I know Ryan already talked about this once. We just got a message from somebody in our helpline that said, you know, I have a bobo, but I want it to be as big as a basketball. Can I prune it to that size? And I was like, well, why don't you get a plant that is supposed to be as big as a basketball? If you want, get the size of plant that you really want it to be. And I get it. Like, you've bought a beautiful hydrangea. It's growing underneath your window. You've always loved it. But every year it grows to be 5 feet tall and covers your window, because that's what it's designed to do. So if you have a panicle hydrangea, cut it back by a third so it maintains its size. Panicle hydrangeas, like Bobo, will get bigger than their tag size if all you ever do is deadhead them, because they're designed to grow on new wood. They're big, tough, strong growers. But don't try to maintain the size of your hydrangea through pruning. It's just it's not natural.
Yep, buy the right plant for the right spot. And fortunately, all of our companies have done our very best to create plants that can be that little pocket size to, if you need that big hedge, we've got those for you too. And continuing to work on better disease resistance, better flowering, more unique colors in all of those sizes. So you've got all the options. So right plant for the right spot.
Okay, Ryan, so I think you read my mind, because I was going to ask each of you to kind of give a closing thought specific to hydrangeas. I knew you were going to say this because you and I talk about this a lot, is the right plant for the right place. Yep. Which of course you can come up with another one. So Georgia or Natalie, I'm not going to put Ryan on the spot right away, since he just came up with that one, but would you guys want to close out with one final thought or tip on hydrangeas, other than go out there and get some new hydrangeas? There's so many wonderful things. That's my tip.
You know, my tip,
Diane.
My tip is, if you really want success with hydrangeas and you don't know where to start, go to your local garden center. The people that run your local garden center know exactly what's going to work in your area. They know where, what plants spell success in your area. They can give you the tips and the tools that you need to make a really beautiful garden. That's what independent garden centers are all about. And we really, really support them and the work that they do. So start there. And then, we're always available to answer questions and things like that. But gosh, there's nothing like going in the spring and filling up your cart at your local garden center.
Wow, those are all three very good tips. So I guess I'll take what a straggler. So one of the things that I often, maybe this would be a misconception, right, is that a Hydrangea macrophylla is a full shade plant. And we often get that question about things. And so my tip would be that's, I would say, in lieu of the myths of this hour, that's not really true, and that your Hydrangea macrophylla does really love a good bit of sun. So morning sun is really wonderful. Just make sure you give it some afternoon shade, and then hands off, just enjoy it. It's a great plant, and if you find the right one at your garden center and you're looking for these new genetics that we're all spending so much time and effort to put out and make sure you're really getting you're having the most success, you really don't need to do much but enjoy.
Awesome. So Ryan, do you have another one other than right plant, right place?
Yeah, I think just to add exactly on what Georgia was saying, that there are so many ways to enjoy hydrangeas. And with all of the breeding, the work that's been done, and Georgia was mentioning that, their breeding work also looks at cut hydrangeas, you can do so much with them. Enjoy them in the landscape, especially if you got a rebloomer. You can take some of those cuts and hopefully you won't be completely without flowers the rest of the season. They're beautiful for dried arrangements, wreaths. We do a lot of projects like putting them in resin if you want to make coasters for it. There's just so many interesting, fun ways that you can use hydrangeas. So they're not just for the landscape. They're great in deco pots. They're great on a patio, and they're really, really beautiful in the house too.
Yeah, many uses, many varieties, many colors. So yeah, what have you got to lose? There's just so much to be gained from hydrangeas. I love them. Okay. Whoa, we got over an hour. That's okay, because there's so much. I mean, we literally could go another hour, I know, based on the questions we're getting. But seriously, everybody, I will send out a follow-up email. I will put links to what was provided today, some of our other blogs and webinars. So I think in the email you get after today's webinar, you're going to hopefully get like all your questions answered about hydrangeas. So with that, Georgia, Natalie, Ryan, as always, thank you so much for your time and your knowledge and expertise. It's wonderful. You've inspired all of us to do more with hydrangeas, plant more, buy more, etc. Enjoy them more. And with that, thank you, and have a wonderful afternoon and evening.